Welcome to Truckee Talks. I'm your host, Maya Schneider. The interface between wildlife and people is becoming more and more of a problem as our communities grow and we encroach into the wildlife areas that we move up here to enjoy. On this show, we're going to be looking at different ways to make our communities safe and how we should be interacting with wildlife in our community and our region. I'd like to welcome Connie Stevens from the Wildlife Shelter. Connie, nice to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
And Alan Carter from Placer County Sheriff's Office. Alan, nice to have you on the show as well.
Thanks.
Well, let's start off with one of the more obvious, and the picture we're about to put on the screen is a picture that everybody is familiar with, and that's a bear in the garbage. We see this all the time. Here you've got him. Looks like he's really helping himself to whatever's inside this enclosure. Connie, what's wrong with this picture? It looks cute.
It does look cute, Maya, and our problem with the picture as humans is that we're drawn to this picture and people want to come closer to an animal as wonderful and beautiful as our local black bears are and as large and grand as they are. And fortunately, or unfortunately, they're even docile, some could say, in that they tolerate humanity and they look forward to the adventures of climbing into the trash containers, such as what was illustrated in that photo. What's wrong with the picture is that we're drawn to it. What's wrong with the picture is that a fed bear is a dead bear. No matter how they find that food that comes from you, me, our neighbors, that bear will eventually find its way into the source of that food, which is our home. And in crossing that threshold, I'm sure Alan will agree, this is where we cross the threshold to death for our local bears. We don't want them crossing over.
We're going to be talking about not only bears but other wildlife in this show. But Alan, I want to talk to you as a law enforcement officer for Placer County. What is your interaction like wildlife within our, what I would call urban centers, although it's hard to think of Tahoe City as urban.
On the bear issue, because that, of course, as Connie said, was the most volatile. And our response to that involves deploying a less lethal projectile at the animal, causing it to flee and become hopefully re-educated as to operating within its normal wildlife habitat and not seeing humanity as a source of food. And so far it's working fairly well, I would say.
So it's about consequences. If the bear goes to a container and finds food, that's positive reinforcement. If a bear goes to a container and gets hit with something that doesn't feel good, that's negative.
Correct.
And that's the goal, is to try to get the bear moved away?
And it's fairly successful. We frequently come across bears, and we're as close to them as that photo showed. And if you can scare it, we have noisemakers, pyrotechnics, rubber shotgun rounds that, you know, they hurt, but they don't hurt the bear. And, you know, you have to be a certain distance away, of course, when you deploy these things, but, you know, they're pretty good.
We'll ask you later on in the show about your personal experiences encountering bears, but I want to get back to Connie. Connie, what's the role of the Wildlife Shelter?
The role of the Wildlife Shelter in our community between Lake Tahoe, Truckee, and I would also say Sierra County, is to respond to the community's needs when they collide with wildlife and when they find wildlife that may have had a collision with someone earlier or something earlier. That would be to determine whether the animal should be rescued in the first place, to rehabilitate it in the manner that's most appropriate for that particular species, and then to release it in an area that is more appropriate for it. Certainly, if it has been hit by a car, our issue is not to take that predator back to the street where it was hit by a car. It would be generally within a 3-mile radius.
Well, let's talk about some of the other animals. A compelling photograph that you brought that we'll be taking a look at is of a raccoon that was captured that had its paw caught in a can, and I think this is sort of clearly illustrates the interface between our polluting our environment and what happens when we do that. And this is really a tragic photograph. Is this something that you see fairly often?
I would say no, we don't see this type of issue fairly often, in that they get caught within the cans. Those are just the wide-mouth pop-top cans that this raccoon found wherever. And it's a young raccoon, and it found it for both of the front paws, which didn't allow it then to be able to find food and to eat it.
To ambulate or
absolutely. Could not climb a tree to get away from a dog. Really, this animal should not have survived, and it's a miracle that we ever even got to be educated by this particular creature. And each one of the animals that come into our shelter, they are a professor of their own. They are the teacher to tell us what we can do to help them perhaps better in the future and to avoid it. And
Well,
that's what this particular case was.
And now you have volunteers that are working the wildlife shelter?
We have volunteers, and we have one part-time employee, and we're looking for either 2 other part-time employees or 1 full-time employee at this time. And we're always looking for volunteers.
I'm always looking for volunteers, and we'll be showing telephone numbers for folks that may want to get interested or involved in that. Alan, let's go back to you for a moment. As a law enforcement officer, how much of your time is dedicated to animal issues? Is it significant? Is it small?
Well, up here, of course, it occupies a larger portion of our time than, say, in an urban area. But, and of course, in the spring and the fall, when the bears are most active, that's when we get the bulk of our problem bears and our interdiction of same.
Now, you bring up a good point. This show will be airing somewhere the first part of April, and bears are going to be out. In fact, it's been a very unusually warm early spring for us.
They're already starting to come back.
So you're already seeing animals out, the bears especially, and they've got to be hungry.
Oh, yeah.
Hungry and scrounging for food. Interesting, some of the different enclosures that people are now building for their garbage to sort of help deter bear activity. Is that helping?
I think so. I think it's helping quite a great deal. Usually the issue we have is with a second homeowner or a renter coming up and leaving, say, on a Sunday evening, which isn't trash day. Trash day's not till Wednesday or Thursday, say, and they leave the can out on the curb for the entire, 3 or 4 days or whatever it is, and then it's, ravaged
the dinner
by just
call.
about everything. Exactly.
Right, dogs, raccoons, coyotes,
Exactly.
bears.
That's a big problem.
Anybody that can get to it. Well, let's show a few more of these pictures. You have a photograph of a bobcat, of all things. I shouldn't say that's too unusual, but how would a creature like this go about being captured in the first place?
Well, bobcats are interesting because they're so secretive. And we seldom ever really have an opportunity as a member of the public and living in this area to really see them in their natural habitat because they're so secretive. Now, with that said, sometimes they run into difficulty and they're crossing a road and they end up colliding with a car. So most often, the bobcats that come our way have been collided with by a vehicle on the main road. And this particular bobcat came to us from the Beckworth area. And it was a male, and he did very well in recovering, fortunately. So we keep them in the clinic for a period of time until they're strong enough to stand and start to climb. They're definitely self-feeding, and their head is pretty well able to help them find their direction that they want to go and keep them in balance. Then they'll go outside so that we can see them climb and do the other necessary things that they have to do in order to survive. And the final, of course, is to make sure that their brains are unscrambled sufficiently to be able to catch the prey.
I'm not sure how you test a bobcat for that. Do you hold up Rorschach tests? Or
No. We set them there with live prey, and they do have to do a kill before they're released.
Oh, interesting. All right.
Yes,
Okay.
and that's the only time that they're ever tested on live prey is just before release, when they absolutely have to have it to survive.
So that poor little mouse from the pet store that thinks it's found a happy home is actually being carted off to be well, never mind.
Thank you.
I'd like to hear an answer from both of you on this one. Alan, we'll start with you. What happens if, let's say, you're driving Highway 89 late at night and you do hit a wild animal? You hit a bear or a raccoon, a deer. What should you do? The animal may be injured but not dead. What's your first step?
Well, the first step would be to notify the proper authority, and that could be either ourselves or Connie has a 24-hour person, I think, that comes out to that kind of thing that can assess its, ability to be rehabilitated, if you will. The biggest thing that I would say is if it runs off into the bush, great.
Yeah.
Then it's well enough to cope and handle. But if it doesn't and it sits there, a lot of people will approach it and take that opportunity to get close to a wild animal.
Yeah.
And it's very dangerous. If the animal's so injured that you can approach it and pet it and touch it and put a blanket on it and stuff, it's usually so injured that it's not really going to have that great of a chance. And it could come back a little bit and really do some damage to whoever is
So
trying
don't
to do
approach
this.
the animal, no
without-
matter how injured it looks.
Without any training or any kind of, thing like that, it would be a very unwise thing to do.
Connie, you agree
Absolutely.
with that?
Public safety is the foremost issue here in education, no doubt about it. And with the wildlife shelter, we work hand in hand with the Sheriff's Department, as well as California Highway Patrol and any other government agency.
So you've got cooperation with all of these
Totally.
agencies. We have a a couple more pictures to go through before we break. I'd like to look at one, and that's you had a orphan bird or a small, looked like a small owl. Here we have the shot here. Connie, walk us through that. What is?
Yes, this is a northern pygmy owl. They're very small. Those are my hands, and be they not very large, still you can see that the owl is even smaller. This is our only diurnal owl that we have in the mountains in the Truckee Tahoe area, and it hunts during the daytime, and its favorite food is the mountain chickadee. That's part of that balance, that sweet little bird. But this is also
it's part
sort
of the
a
chain.
sweet little bird.
Right.
It's most definitely also enjoying warblers and small birds. And it's part of that balance that's out there. That little owl came in with a wing trauma, and we were able to set it and get him released back to the wild. And he did come from the West Shore, so we hiked him up at Ski Homewood area, and he has a wonderful area
Great
to
success
continue his
story.
life.
Great success story. We're going to take a break right now. We are talking about wildlife and how to interface with wildlife, or how to stay away from interfacing with wildlife in our region. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about living with wildlife, and our guests are Connie Stevens. Connie, welcome back from the Wildlife Shelter, and Alan Carter from Placer County Sheriff's Office. We looked at some pretty striking images in the first half of the show. We'll look at a few more in the second half. But before we do that, Connie, you wanted to talk a little bit about what the mission of the Wildlife Shelter is. I think this is a good time to do that.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to advise your viewers that a big part of our mission is to educate the public. And in so doing, we find that then we're able to complete the second half of the mission, which has to do with rescue, rehabilitate, and release.
So what sort of outreach do you do to the community in terms of education?
We have a very good web page if anybody's interested.
And now's the time to tell them.
That would be wildlifeshelter.org.
Okay.
And of course, calling into our clinic line is a welcomed phone call for us if they have any questions about wildlife and any issues that they might feel that they have with wildlife. Most often the issue for us is trying to get the information out to people as to why we feel that wildlife is, that particular species is so important for the balance here at the Lake Tahoe and Truckee area.
Now, you mentioned something interesting. We were talking off camera about the type of people that volunteer to work with wildlife. And let's talk a little bit about that. I think people, especially perhaps visitors and second homeowners, come up, see wildlife, and are intrigued by it. We may get sort of jaded, oh yeah, there's another bear, but other folks that come to the area, especially to visit, may really be excited by that and turned on by the idea of working with wildlife as a way to interface more with animals that otherwise they wouldn't get to approach. What's your response to that?
Well, our response is welcome, absolutely welcome, but consider that the majority of work with wildlife is cleaning, because that's the majority of work with any species, including ours. If you're working in a hospital, and this is a hospital environment, the majority of the work is cleaning and maintaining a sanitary environment for the patients as well as other volunteers. We have an internship program as well that we provide to our community for seniors in high school and college students from all over the United States. And we also get inquiries from those students on our webpage about what they want to do, and most often it's the glamour of, oh yes, we're going to work with raptors and birds of prey and eagles and bears and mountain lions. And well, the reality is that even if we have these species that are in residence with us or patients with us, you're not going to have that up close and personal contact that you're thinking to be so terribly or terrifically glamorous.
Right.
It's going to be the aspects of cleaning and maintaining an environment for them, which means a distance from humanity.
The next picture that we have up to show is a compelling, and one of those pictures that you would just say, "Aw," to. It's an orphaned raccoon. We'll get this picture up, and the I think the important thing to note here, it's a small raccoon, this is
Yes.
not an adult raccoon, and that you've got a volunteer there. This is not your
Absolutely.
ordinary woman on the street. This is somebody who's been trained and knows how to handle these animals.
Absolutely.
Tell us
Joyce
about
is
this raccoon.
very, very well qualified and trained and willing to do feedings, if you will, for mammals every 2 hours around the clock. And when this little girl came in, she had been orphaned, and the family had called in reporting that they had a family of raccoons underneath their house and they wanted to get them out. And someone got a trap from somewhere and they set the trap. And the mom was trapped, and so they went out. Yes, we've got her in the trap, threw her in the back of the pickup and drove her away, thinking they're doing a great thing for mom, and let her go. And the babies were too small to be
fend for
out and to
themselves.
fend for themselves. 3 of the 4 died of dehydration, and this was the last one, and she did make it, fortunately, because of a volunteer such as like Joyce, to be able to do those multiple feedings. This is a mammal, and just as is true with humans, who are also mammals, they do require feedings through the night.
I was going to say every 2 hours would be setting the alarm and being pretty cranky over the next couple of days.
Absolutely.
Another picture that we have to show our audience is a bear in the cage, and I want to talk about this one. Oh, okay. This is, I apologize for not giving warning on this picture. This is a bear that was struck by a car.
Yes, on the west shore of Lake Tahoe. And it was coming around a curve, the vehicle, and there was not a lot left of that vehicle, unfortunately, but at least the inhabitants of the vehicle, the humans, were okay. But it was a head-on, literally, with the head of this bear and the shoulder. And this is why we caution people, and I'm sure Alan agrees, at nighttime when you're driving, you cannot see a black bear, or as well a cinnamon or a brown bear. They are all black bears, but of the 3 different colors. They're very difficult to see even when they're large. And the caution is when you're coming around corners, please do slow down.
And most of the animals that you would have the opportunity to interact with are nocturnal animals. They're out prowling at night, getting their food, and that's when we're out driving around, maybe a little too fast. Maybe
Absolutely.
Slow down a little
The
bit.
issue would be the black bears, such as what we saw, and the raccoons are hit by cars frequently around the lake and in Truckee, or bobcats and coyotes, all 4.
So slow down.
Please.
Alan, what about that? Do you find a lot of traffic issues in terms of special high problem areas, interface between wildlife and cars?
There's not one particular area that we find this occurs more often, but 89 seems to be, I guess, because of the length of the highway. We've had several bad accidents there. I remember one that was 2 motorcyclists and a deer,
Oh.
and it was pretty bad.
That sounds like a bad combination.
Yeah, it was very bad. So you have to pay attention. Just be cognizant that these critters are out there.
And depending on the stretch that you're on, as you recall that story, I recall riding on a motorcycle on Highway 89 just coming out of Sierra Valley and nearly colliding with a deer, and certainly shaving 10 or 12 years off the top of my life in the process. So there are certain areas where you may be more likely, maybe not in the middle of Truckee, but certainly out in the more rural areas to run across animals, especially deer, who seem to just jump out of the middle of nowhere and get in the way, although we're in their way as well. There's another shot that I did want to show, and that's a bear in a cage. Here we go. And you see the scale here. It's not too clear of a picture for our audience, but you get an idea. You can see the legs of the officers here handling the bear within this cage. What's the story behind this animal?
This was a few years ago when there was a fire at Crystal Peak, and there were some telephone operators, not operators, but telephone equipment work people that were at the top of the telephone pole after this fire had raged through a certain area, and they spotted the bear walking not very well balanced along the roadway. So we got a call that there was approximately a 25-pound cub.
I was going to say
That
25-pound bear is a baby bear.
Was injured and emaciated and dehydrated and didn't appear to be very well balanced, and so we were asked if we would rescue. And this was in Nevada. So the Forestry Department from Nevada had called us to participate, and we had permission from California, since this is a balance between California and
Lot of
Nevada as
agencies,
well.
lot of
We want to be
agencies.
sure everyone's happy and on the same page as to who's doing what to whom. So we did accept it, and then the bear, if you wanted to show the other photos upon receipt to the Sierra Pet Clinic, Dr. Ryan had treated the paws of the bear, and then also participating in that was Dan Olson from the town of Truckee Animal Control, which we were very appreciative for his help because he was monitoring the bear while it was under anesthesia.
So a lot of, again, interagency. You've got the volunteer group, the law enforcement, and so many different agencies here, 2 counties, 3 counties really, that you're dealing with, 2 states, an incorporated city, volunteer organizations. It sounds like it takes a bit of coordination to get everybody together on the same page.
It absolutely does, and because this is a hot topic for all of us when we're talking about bears, you do not just go out and help. Much as you might like to drop all of the entanglements and red tape, we go out to help while we're on the cell phone to the different agencies to say this is what we're doing and why we're doing it and where we're going, and we'll keep you posted, and please send someone, and we'll transfer the information or do whatever they choose for us to do. It's whatever happens, but in the best interest of the wildlife that we're treating. And in this case, this was a young bear. And she was not 25 pounds, she was 49 pounds, a little bit bigger. Yeah, but she did fit in the cage quite easily and was transported, and we kept her for 8 days.
Now, is this the same bear?
Yes, she's under anesthesia, and we have Dr. Ryan holding her head ever so gently. And then we have Dan Olson from Animal Control as well.
Was helping out. Okay.
And then you'll see the feet. And the problem with her was that her feet were terribly burned, and the rear feet were more so than the front paws. And Dr. Ryan and his associate, Mimi from, I believe she's an animal health technician from the Sierra Pet Clinic, came to the wildlife shelter and treated this bear every 3rd day. So there were 2 additional treatments that took place after she was released from the Sierra Pet Clinic for the initial treatment. We had 20 minutes to lift her out and set her down so we could quick clean the enclosure, and then she started coming around and push her back inside. We did not want her
When she's coming out of
waking up.
anesthesia, that's a good time for her to be in the cage and you to be out of it.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about outreach to visitors in the area. How do the law enforcement agencies, or how does the wildlife shelter reach out to folks who may only be up for a weekend? Is there any sort of literature or any programs in place to educate our visitors?
Well, the Sheriff's Office doesn't really get involved a whole lot in that. We're pretty reactive rather than proactive because wildlife interdiction isn't our primary function.
Right.
But there's all sorts of places you can go. Connie certainly is one. The Erman Mansion down the Westlake State Park there, they've got a whole facility, a wildlife museum, all sorts of literature you can take with you, and their park rangers are, of course, really knowledgeable on how to deal with and interface with our little animals.
And of course, I don't mean to imply at all that it's the visitors or second homeowners or anybody that isn't a permanent resident that's the problem. I think just the sheer numbers of people that we have is really where we run into the issue. What about folks that are recreating outside of the delineated urban areas? So say somebody who's backpacking on the Pacific Crest Trail and runs across animals. Do you provide any kind of education on how to deal with animals out in the wild?
Absolutely, Maya. If anyone calls, they're going to get some information, one. Also, we have a program every year that starts the 4th of July weekend and goes all the way through Labor Day on the bike trail, which Sierra Power was kind enough to donate the platform and the benches that people have available to them to attend these programs. It's every Saturday from 12 noon until 1 o'clock. And we have a variety of subjects that we cover throughout this 10-week period that will be presented this year. It's open to the public. All ages are welcome. It's applicable to all ages. And certainly if people have questions, we would hope that they would bring them to us there for discussion, as well as any additional literature that we have to give to them.
It's probably a good time to get the wildlife shelter's telephone number and contact information back up on the screen so we can show that. Again, the mailing address is there. Best contact number, Connie, is 546-1211. That's a 24-hour number?
Correct.
Okay, and then the office number is 525-5960.
Great.
And then you have a website, and that's www.wildlifeshelter.org.
Exactly.
Okay, good place to go, good resources. We do have another photograph to bring up, and this is sort of a happier photograph. It's a photograph of a release of a wild animal. And And what's encouraging about that is that he's on the way out and back into
Absolutely.
the wild.
And back to the state of Nevada, because clearly our agreement with Nevada as well as California, although the borders are very close, our point of information to the public, as well as we do reassure the government agencies, what comes from Nevada goes back to Nevada, and what comes from California goes back to California.
Sure, wildlife is a resource like any other resource would be. I'm assuming, but you'll have to tell me if I'm correct here, I'm assuming that the goal of the wildlife shelter is to rehabilitate animals for re-release into their natural environment.
Absolutely. Currently today, that is our program.
What about relocation? Do you ever find it necessary, and Alan, you may have run across this with more aggressive bears, to relocate an animal? It simply cannot seem to get the notion that being in an urban area is not a good plan. Do you ever relocate animals?
We don't. Unfortunately, there's no program in place for us to do that. If a bear becomes a problem bear, the usual solution is to eliminate it.
A fed bear is a dead bear.
Correct, and it's unfortunate, but that's usually the only solution that'll work.
From what I understand, and again, this is the California Department of Fish and Game's arena, so I would strongly suggest that anyone in the audience that may want more information, or for yourself, is to call the California Department of Fish and Game, and they are listed in the telephone book. But their policy generally has been what they've found in the past. If a bear is a problem here today, the bear is going to be a problem there tomorrow, wherever there is that you take him to.
There's just
They
no bear
will
that's far enough
find
away.
it. Yes, it's
Sure.
unfortunate, but at least within the state, because again, California will keep California bears here unless they're going to be taken out of state to be placed in a non-releasable facility. And the state of California is very open to that. But remember that taking care of a bear is very expensive.
There's a cost. I was going to say there's
Tremendous
definitely a
cost
cost
is
to that.
involved in caring for it for its entire life.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up here. Connie, you said something that really struck me at the beginning of the show, and that's if you want to view wildlife, do it through binoculars. And we really have to learn to respect the wildlife, not interface with it any more than we really have to, and let them enjoy their natural environment. Alan, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Connie, nice to have you on the show as well. Good luck to both of you. Thank you very much for joining us here on Truckee Talks. Remember, a fed bear is a dead bear. It's just not a great idea to feed those animals. And if you have questions, contact the Wildlife Shelter, Placer County Sheriff, Nevada County Sheriff, Town of Truckee Animal Control. Lots of resources out there. Thank you for joining us on Truckee Talks, and we'll see you next time. Welcome to Truckee Talks. I'm your host, Maya Schneider. And on today's show, we have some very special guests that will be talking to us about a program here in Truckee and in the community, Youth in Action. It's my very distinct pleasure to welcome back to the show Melinda Mahler. Melinda, nice to have you. Now, people wouldn't recognize you without your uniform on.
No, I took a little bit of a break.
You are with Placer County Sheriff's Office.
Yes, I am.
Okay, glad to have you here on the
Thank
show. A huge honor to have my friend Nicole Comeaux on the show. Nicole, great to have you here.
Thank you.
And her friend and our new guest, Becca Logan. Becca, nice to have you on the show as well. Welcome. We were talking about Youth in Action, and I want to start off with what is Youth in Action? What is that?
Youth in Action was a group that was developed in 1996 by MAD. They figured that underage drinking issues should be dealt with by children that are under the age of 21. That way, they can come together with adults and find solutions to this problem.
So you say MAD, you mean Mothers Against
Mothers
Drunk
Against Drunk Driving.
And,
correct.
and so what their goal is then is to have peer education through Youth in Action?
Actually, what it is my children are empowered. They're fully trained on all the issues that confront them on underage drinking, and they deal with it. I just kind of guide them and do what they want. So basically, they're trained. They go into the community and then talk to the community and try to teach the community about these problems and work on what issues are important to our community locally.
Well, let's ask the two of you first how you got involved. Nicole, how did you get involved with Youth in Action?
Actually, I saw Death Every 15 Minutes when I was a sophomore, just because I had a class that was, there was more, like a majority of juniors and seniors in it, so I actually got to go. And I was really interested in the program, and I thought that it was a great presentation, and I just wanted to get involved and help plan that for next year. So.
Now, we featured Death Every 15 Minutes with Melinda on this show.
Correct.
That's a very moving program. That's hugely impactful. It was for me, and it must be for the students as well. Becca, how about you? How'd you get involved?
Last year I was involved in peer court, which has now become part of Youth in Action. I don't know, I think we're going to talk about it a little more. We work as peers to help with kids, like, let's say they get in trouble. I think it's easier to have peers, you know, help them with rehabilitation, like community service, things that they're going to have just as a result because of what they did. But it helps having peers involved. So I think it's less intimidating for those who are in trouble. And last year I was involved in this program, and so I knew Melinda and I was familiar with her from that, and then she brought Youth in Action to us. So.
And what kind of training did you go through before you started going out into the community to educate others?
For peer court?
For Youth in Action.
For Youth in Action, we've had several training sessions, not only here at the school, we've had them at North Star, even in North Tahoe. We've joined with both North Tahoe and students from Truckee. And so we've had training sessions. We had people fly in from like Texas, all over, coming here to train us so that we do have the ability to go out and make a positive message that's also effective.
So Nicole, when you go out to the community, what kind of message are you giving to people, and who are you talking to?
Well, a lot of, like you said, you were asking if we were going and trying to affect our peers, and basically it's good when we can affect our peers, but the whole community is like what drives our peers. So when we go out, it's more like we're trying to stop things that basically set like community norms that drinking is okay, and that's like our main focus. And what we've been doing is having some fundraisers lately and things like Death Every 15 Minutes that just bring awareness to the entire community.
You know, if you read the local paper, there are a couple of different incidents. One was a private party in Tahoe Donner that made the letters to the editor. Another was the prom recently and letters there. How naive, how undereducated is the community, Melinda, about teenagers and drinking?
Well, I think that what we have is we have things that have been going on for a long time. And people do feel that their homes are sacred, and what they do in their homes shouldn't be interfered by law enforcement or community members, and that is true. But when your child leaves your home and goes out into the public, it now affects all of us, whether they're driving or they become, you know, over-intoxicated and have to be taken to the hospital. That affects all of us. So what we're trying to do is bring this information to a community that it seems like that hasn't been brought out. So the children are just trying to educate and build on that education. For example, we just did Pig Jam, which was done at Truckee High School. The only reason that was done was to bring law enforcement and students together to provide an alcohol and drug-free evening for the community. We had a great time.
Was that really pig jam?
Pig jam.
Now, 20 years ago, that would have been completely unacceptable.
Right. No, the law enforcement officers are wonderful. The kids came up with it. They dressed them in pink T-shirts, and the guys
Pink
went.
pigtails.
They did, and little pink tails on the back, and they went with the flow. And they actually only lost by 1 point. So now they've challenged. And this Friday we go to North Tahoe, and law enforcement plays the team again at North Tahoe, so both communities can experience this. But basically, it's just educating, and not trying to reprimand anybody, bring it to them, and most people are wonderful. They're really being open and saying, well, I didn't know that, because zero tolerance is a very vague law, so we really want to bring that out.
Well, I think a number of people would be surprised in this community to find out how much drinking goes on and the damages that can be done as a consequence of that. Nicole, what do you think about that? When you look around at your peers, do you think there's a problem? Are we overestimating what the problem is in drinking with the teens in our community, or?
No, I definitely think there is a problem, and I know like MAD's entire focus is to stop underage drinking completely, but as of right now, I think our main purpose is just to stop them from getting behind the wheel, because that's the biggest problem, I think, and that's what's killing people. And I don't know, the drinking is definitely out of control. Like alcohol has actually been proven to kill 6 times more than all of the illicit drugs combined. So that is definitely at our school.
Yeah,
That's
it's
the way
so
it seems.
mainstream that people don't see it as a drug problem, but of course it is.
And they've now proven that 49% of 6th graders will experience the use of alcohol through peer pressure, and that's in 6th grade.
How much?
49%
Of 11-year-olds?
Yes, of 6th graders.
10 years before
Yes,
they're of age.
Yes. Where in my time period, we were talking maybe high school, juniors and seniors, but now it's dropping as low as 6th graders.
Well, their bodies aren't even developed.
Right, and they're
let
now
alone their
finding
psyches.
that anybody under the age of 14, up to 14, that experiences alcohol and continues to use alcohol is 50 times more likely to become an alcoholic. And they now are trying to figure out in San Diego through research some of the damage that's done to the brain that you cannot recover
can't
at this
recover.
young age, because it is a
Yeah.
developing brain.
These are very important topics. I want to step back a little bit to something Becca was talking about before, and Becca, maybe you can help clarify that. What is peer court? How does that work?
Peer court is set up. It's set up so similar to like a court of law. We have Judge Holman is approving it. We set it up exactly like that. It's been in action several times in other areas. I know down in like Placerville area, Auburn, they have a strong program down there. What we do, we set up a team of peers, and they work as prosecuting attorneys, defense attorneys. There's a jury. There's every single person in the court, except for the judge, is a high school student. They're peers. They're peers of those being judged. So what we do, we try and set up something that we do feel will help them make better choices, and I think they take it more to heart if it's from their peers, as
Well, and their peers may be more harsh on them than
That's
an
true.
adult would be.
And they find it more effective, I believe. The peer court, I think, is more effective as far as people repeating what they've done. So it's more effective having peers work with their peers. It has a better effect, and it helps them see what they could be doing. It helps them see, oh, I could be involved in this. This is a great program. It's helping the community, and we're just in high school, so it helps them into a better outlet, and also helps them see what they could be doing.
Now, things have probably changed a lot since I was in high school. But this begs the question for me, what kind of pressure do the two of you get? Do you get any flack or any negative feedback from other kids in school, or do you get positive reinforcement? What kind of experience has this been for you personally?
Well, I think that it has become such a norm that it is different for everyone when like their peers and other students in the school actually start like going against that norm of drinking. And we have had some negative feedback, but mostly we do get people that are interested in helping out and people that are interested in getting involved. I mean, our group has expanded so rapidly since September. There's 73 members right now.
Wow, that's
near
huge.
North Tahoe and our group, so.
And Melinda, when I hear you and when I watch you, you look like the pride of a mother here of 73 children.
I thought when we started this program in September, I was sent to Dallas to train through MAD, and I thought, okay, 10 from each high school, I'll be really happy. That was my goal. And they surpassed that, and they're outstanding kids. We have athletes, leadership, we have some from the music program, drama. It's phenomenal. We're the biggest youth in action in the United States right now.
Is that right?
Yes.
That's something to be proud of. Congratulations. That's great.
I'm really proud of them. We've done a lot.
Now, you're working with both the high schools, North Tahoe
Yes, I am.
as well as Truckee Tahoe High School. Let's talk a little bit about the prom. We brought it up. Are people, the smirks,
both look at
yeah.
each
Have people learned from this?
I strongly believe that there has been a great effect from this. There is people, they don't support what happened at prom, and I think that's just because they weren't expecting it. We've been hearing so often, like, things are going to happen, you're not allowed to drink at this school event. And it's great that we finally had Placer County support zero tolerance, which is a law that's in effect, especially on the school ground in public. So we finally had Placer County support us. I think part of the reason we've had some disapproval is mainly because we weren't expecting it. But students now know that it is in effect and that it's not tolerated. So we're hoping that that will change, especially in the following school year.
So people won't be surprised by it. They'll know if they show up drunk or drink alcohol on site that they're going to get hauled away.
And zero tolerance, since zero tolerance has been put into place, they figure that 17,000 lives have been saved due to this law. And so, to me, 17,000 lives, if we even saved one child at that prom, I'm willing to take the flak for that, because I think that that's an important thing, not putting that child behind the wheel.
And zero tolerance basically enforces laws that are already in effect, but says there's no warning, there's no getting off.
Actually, zero tolerance was put in place by a Tennessee Youth in Action. They were one of the 6 pilot programs that actually started in '96. Their friends were dying, and they knew they were part of this new program, and they wanted to do something. So they went to Washington, D.C. and met with Senator Byrd, who thought their idea was fantastic. He then enacted zero tolerance, which is now a federal law across the United States. What it does is any child under the age of 21 that is caught driving behind the wheel with a .01 alcohol level or higher is considered it's illegal. And then any child that's in public consuming alcohol is also illegal too.
.01 and .08 is the
Illegal
level of
right.
intoxication
Right.
for adults. Easy for me to say, and I haven't had anything to drink. All right, well, this is a fascinating program. We're going to be talking more about this. We do have to take a break right now, but we'll be back with Melinda Mahler, Nicole Comeaux, and Becca, Logan. It's very nice to have all 3 of you on the show.
Thank you.
We'll be back in just a minute. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Truckee Talks. We're talking about youth in action, and our guests today are Melinda Mahler. Melinda, nice to have you back.
Thank you.
Nicole Comeaux and Becca Logan. Becca, nice to have you. I keep checking for your name because I want to change your last name, Becca. I apologize, but I'll stop doing that, I promise. Melinda, there's a lot that goes on with this program. You've got 73 students, you need training, you need logistics. There's got to be costs involved.
There are.
How do you fund this program?
Well, to date, either Placer County Sheriff's Department or the California Highway Patrol, whatever I need, they come forward helping to fund their meals at training or, for example, the shirts for Pig Jam, so it didn't come out of their money. But we have a program that's a valuable program, and so the children have decided they want to start funding their program, which is, it's credible. I think they should.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So are you going out then and soliciting dollars from people in the community?
We're trying. It's kind of hard to raise money to go to a conference in Hawaii because it's Hawaii, and how can you learn there? No, but I really think we will. We didn't really get into the conference yet, but this National Safety Conference that we've been invited to is actually going to be held in Honolulu, and our Youth in Action team and the Youth in Action team from Hawaii will be the only 2 teams there. And so we're actually being asked to represent all 43 teams in the United States. And I think that it is going to be a great learning experience. Earlier when we were talking about zero tolerance, we have actually found a loophole in that law that we want to go to the state legislature and try and get fixed. What's happening is when people are getting pulled over and they are under the influence, only the driver of the vehicle is getting in trouble. or having any consequences whatsoever, and even if the other kids in the car are under the influence. So we want to try and change that and make sure that they have consequences as well as their driver. So I think that this conference in Hawaii is going to be like a great tool to help us to prepare to go talk to the state legislature about that.
Well, let's talk about that National Safety Conference then. You mentioned it's going on in Hawaii. Who's putting this on?
It's being put on by RAD, Rock Artists Against Drunk Drivers, MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. An Indian nation is coming in to assist. Honolulu is supporting it. All the safety organizations across the United States are coming in to put this together, and there's going to be 1,000 students from all over the United States there. And like Nikki said, we are one of the ones that MAD National asked to go and represent the other 43 because this group is so dynamic. They feel that they're ready for all the learning that's going to go on there.
That's quite an honor. It really
It
is.
is.
That's pretty amazing. And the seminar itself, you know, Nicole, you mentioned that it's hard to get people to sort of pony up to send a bunch of kids to Kauai, but really you're going to a pretty serious conference. Tell us a little bit about the curriculum there or what you expect to do while you're there.
I believe there's a large amount of different classes that they're offering, not only just in youth and not as an alcohol and being available to children, it's also, excuse me, teenagers. No, there are a lot of issues that concern teenagers today, drug abuse, any issue basically that concerns teenagers today, there's classes on it and how we can educate our community and bring it back to our community so that they're educated enough to make positive decisions. Also, I think it's going to very much benefit our group because we're going to try and do team building. We're going to try and go up there and get enough training to where we are going to bring back such a great effect on our community. We're training, I believe, is it from 8 to 4? 8 to 4. That's a very large period of block of time.
That doesn't leave a whole lot of time for snorkeling and scuba diving
Exactly.
and
I've
all
been
the
to several
fun.
conferences actually with the youth, like just teenagers, and they're so dynamic, they're so effective. We will be learning so much. I do hope that we can, be able to go bring the majority of our group.
Well, we have a central contact number. Melinda,
Yes.
your telephone number with the Placer County Sheriff's Office.
Right, and it's 581-6311, and it goes to the secretary, the administrative secretary, and she knows about the program, and she will get messages and relay them to me quickly, so I can
Okay.
get back to whoever calls.
Okay, great. So there's a contact number. Again, we're looking for funding really to keep the program going as well as to send
Right.
this representative team over to Kauai.
Also, the children have voted that the parents are not going, so they would like to fully fund this program themselves, and I'm really proud of them because I know that their parents are supporting them and would pay for what they can afford, but there are children that cannot afford it in our group, and so everybody has come together as a team and said, we work together as a team, we fundraise as a team, and we train as a team. So what they're going to do is try to raise all the money themselves, and I'm proud of that.
Nicole, when you go back and think about the people that you've reached out to and how many people you've reached out to, what kind of feedback are you getting from people after you go and give a talk or after you go represent Youth in Action, try to educate folks?
Well, actually at one of our most recent fundraisers, which was Pig Jam, I think that we got tons of positive feedback because it was a completely drug and alcohol-free event, and it was after prom, and there's tons of animosity built up between the whole community, like not just parents and cops and kids. It was just out of control. So I think that was like we had a great effect on the community right there. It showed that even the cops and the kids after that were able to come back together and just have a fun game of basketball, and tons of community members showed up. So it was, the gym was basically packed. So I think that was great, and we're going to have another Pig Jam on Friday night because the game was so close, and this time it's going to be in North Tahoe.
A rematch. Becca, how about you? When you go to talk to adults, I can imagine it would be one experience to go and talk to your peers, but to go to talk to a room full of adults, what is that like, and do you think that they're hearing you? Do you think they're getting the message?
I do think that we're having a positive effect on the adults. I've had nothing but great, warm welcomes from adults, and I just try and introduce them to the program, let them know about it, let them know what we're doing. I do believe that all the adults are supportive of it. I think it just helps. I think they're happy to see that zero tolerance is being educated, because I think without education we're causing problems. So by educating about zero tolerance and just letting people know, we're giving them the opportunity to make better choices, and I do believe that the adults are very supportive of this.
Melinda, how long has this program been around on a national level?
National, it started in 1996, and they had 6 pilot programs, and since then, I joined in August of last year, and they had only 22 groups, and as of today, they have 43 groups.
Wow, it's a lot of growth in a short amount of
Yes.
time. Is there any way to track the kind of, I don't know how you could quantify results from this. It's really about education. What people do with that education is up to them. But what kind of other evidence might there be of the program's success?
When we go to do death every 15 minutes next year, instead of death every 15 minutes, it'll be death every 30 minutes.
Is that right?
Yes. And so we're really,
Wow.
the kids are a little upset we have to change everything, but I think it's well worth it. and I
That
think the
was a
kids make
goosebump event. Just hearing that is great news. That's a wonderful accomplishment.
Yeah.
And that has everything to do with the kind of education that you are
It
providing.
does. And in 1998, your chances were much higher of being killed by a drunk driver than by a homicide. There were 0 homicides, and I believe there were 6 or 7 deaths
In our-
by drunk drivers in just the Tahoe, Truckee area.
In just our region.
To date, I'm noticing that both California Highway Patrol has pumped up their service in the field, and Placer County Sheriff's, Nevada County. We have a new police department coming, which we're really excited about, and the new chief of police seems to be right on board
Yes.
with everybody else. So it seems that even our 4th of July arrests are way down because of all the support we're getting from all the local law enforcement and the community. The community
Well, there are
is
things you
backing this,
can't
too.
avoid. You can't avoid getting eaten by a mountain lion on a trail, and you can't avoid getting hit by a runaway Greyhound bus, but by God, you can avoid drinking and getting behind the wheel of a
you can.
car. And really commend you for getting out there and not only standing up to peers who I'm sure are pressuring you to join them, but also taking the extra step of going out and educating everybody in the community about that. That's great. What are some next steps for you when you come back from the conference and next year? I think, Nicole, you said you'll be graduating next year. I'm counting gray hairs on my head as you tell me this news. I've known this girl for way too many years to know that information. What's next? What do you think you'll do after the conference and beyond?
Well, like I was saying before, we are going to try and go get rid of that loophole in the zero tolerance law, so that'll definitely be like a huge step for us. And I think more just awareness. I think there's another group that both of us are involved in called Friday Night Live, and which is another group that's against, well, tries to set up drug and alcohol-free events on Friday nights for youth. And we're going to try and join together with them and set up a PSA, a public service announcement, talking about not only the alcohol abuse, but drug abuse as well. So, well, alcohol is a drug, but...
But you're right,
illicit
people do
drugs. There we
separate
go.
it in their minds.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that'll be another one of our steps. I really can't think of any more.
No, I think that we're going to, along with our plans that Nikki said, we're going to learn so much at our conference. There's so many classes and structured workshops that are set up, and we'll probably learn like so much, get so many ideas, get so much initiative from this conference. We're going to come back and just add to that plan with probably a great deal of activities.
Yeah, I think it'll be like a great motivator for the entire group.
Hey, you mentioned some fundraisers, Melinda.
Yes.
Tell us about those.
So we have the Pig Jam, which we're holding the second one, which you've heard of several times. We have Evening of Stars, which they are going to be honoring both law enforcement, the courts, anybody in the community that is stepping forward against this fight against underage drinking. And what we're going to do is have a very special guest speaker. We're not sure who it's going to be, but we're looking for a special guest speaker. During that evening, the children will be planning everything from the video to all the speeches, the awards, and so they'll be putting that together. They'll have a silent auction table there, which will put anything that we've gotten from raffle prizes on the table.
And what's the date for this?
We're hoping to do it the 3rd Thursday of June, so it'll be the week after graduation.
Town council night?
We'll videotape.
Sounds like a great event, though. And for the students to be putting it all together, that's a handful.
Yeah.
Event coordination is a lot to do.
One of the people that we'd really like to bring up here, and we'd really like to show her how much we care about her, is the woman that lost her family out on 267 several years ago. I know that
Oh, yeah.
hearing her story and my husband being involved in that situation, The next morning when I woke up, I thought there's got to be something we can do as a community, and that's how Death Every 15 Minutes came about. So we would like to bring her up here and show her that through her loss, all of these wonderful things have happened. And,
yeah.
you know, it's unfortunate that her family had to die, but we would like her to know that we do think about her a lot.
It hasn't been
So,
for naught.
right.
Yeah, that's one of the miracles of our community, really, is that so many times people take a tragedy and turn it into something very positive and something that affects everybody. I think of the Luke Schaffner Safety Day
Yeah.
with the car seats. There's just the Tito Martinez Foundation, again, another tragedy turned into something very positive.
And actually, my
and this is
children
the
are going to,
same.
they are going to be car seat safety specialists too. So we're going to be going to the Luke Schaffner Foundation and saying, I've got some
And when
great
do you
teenagers.
study for classes?
But, you know, they give up 3 lunches a week sometimes
that
just to sit and work on these projects. And
Oh,
I
that's just for this club.
And then there's all the other clubs you belong
yeah,
to.
that's just for this one.
Well, we've been talking about youth in action. Again, a really tremendous effort on all of your parts. I really appreciate everything that you're doing, and I think everybody in the community would applaud this. For more information, you can contact Melinda Mahler at 581-6311. That's through the Placer County Sheriff's Office. Again, Becca Logan, great to have you on the show. Nicole Comeaux, awesome. Great to have you on the show as well. Melinda, nice to have you back.
Thank
Out of
you.
uniform or
Thanks.
in, you're always welcome on the show. For more information, you can contact Melinda. And again, thank you for joining us on this Truckee Talks. We'll see you next time.